So may I request you to please turn on your video for the introduction? Namaskar and a very warm welcome to everyone joined in today on our 39th Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk. This talk is being organized by the Central Zoo Authority, New Delhi as part of the ongoing Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The Mahotsav is a 75-week-long celebration to commemorate 75 years of India's independence, which falls on the 15th of August 2022. The Central Zoo Authority is taking this celebration forward through a massive outreach campaign entitled Conservation to Coexistence, The People Connect. Under the helm of this campaign, we will be showcasing 75 conservation priority species and 75 zoos, highlighting one species and one zoo each week. We are currently in week 39 of the celebration, with the Nicobar long-tailed macaque as the species in focus and the biological park Chidiya Tapu as the zoo in focus. So joined in today to speak to us on the species is Dr. H.N. Kumara. Dr. Kumara is the Principal Scientist, Conservation Biology at the Salim Ali Center for Ornithology and Natural Science and Natural History. He has obtained his doctorate from the University of Mysore for his study titled An Ecological Assessment of Mammals in Non-Sanctuary Areas of Karnataka. He has been instrumental in the delineation and prioritization of forest reserves that need conservation, thereby playing a major role in strengthening the protected area network in southern India. He has worked on various taxa in different regions of India and has over 110 publications, 4 book chapters, and acts as a mentor to numerous PhD and MSc students. His research encompasses understanding species distribution, behavior ecology, and conservation practices. He will speak to us today more on the Nicobar long-tailed macaque. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Arundhati. And I'm happy that this is my third talk in this series, actually. And so it is really big privilege for me to give a talk in this entire series. And I will share my slides. I hope my slides are now visible.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. Okay, fine. Right. And now let us go to islands. That is Nicobar Islands. The only one macaque present in that entire our island system is Nicobar long-tailed macaque. Nicobar long-tailed macaque is also known as crab-eating macaque. That I will tell why in a much later. Before I talk about a long-tailed macaque, just I would like to give a brief on few other species because there are among all the macaque species or in the primate group in the Southeast Asia, there are 3 macaques are really widely distributed. One of that is long-tailed macaque, and other one is bonnet macaque, other one is rhesus macaque. Bonnet macaque is confined to South India, where rhesus macaque is much widely distributed, in the Southeast Asia, and where long-tailed macaque is also found in many island system of our Southeast Asia, going out to Philippines to Bangladesh, and very few islands of India is having these long-tailed macaque, that is the Nicobar Islands. That's what you could see here. And my slides are not moving, just...
So if you just click on the screen, I think it should work.
Yes, yes, correct. Thank you. Right. See, in long-tailed macaque, there are about 10 subspecies of long-tailed macaque. They are all confined to the different island system of Southeast Asia, largely Indonesia and Malaysia and Thailand. The only one subspecies that we have that is confined to Nicobar Islands, only three islands of Nicobar group, that is umbrosus. But these umbrosus, when we have looked at it genetically, everybody thinks that, oh, this is a species, since it is very close to Indonesia, this particular tip, it is the closest island, that they are probably are related. But our study, genetic study shows that they're not directly related to these Indonesia, but they are related to this group of island, that is a Javan group of island. Still, we have not answered some of these questions. We are yet to answer some of these questions. It is very interesting to note that how these umbrosus in the Nicobar group of islands is related to the Java. Why not the closest population is one of the really interesting questions that requires to be answered. And earlier, if you before our studies, there were only very little it was known on these macaques. That is only one survey. It was done by Dr. Umapati and the group into it was in 2000, and then later they published a paper in 2003, and later in 2010 there was another paper by Dr. Shiv Kumar, and that is impact of tsunami on the long-tailed macaque population. Other than these two papers, nothing was known on these macaques. Their results I have provided here, that before the tsunami, and the encounter rate is 0.23, 0.27, 0.19 in these islands. But after tsunami, what the encounter rate was projected for all the islands is just 0.1. That means it got reduced to almost 50%. That's what it indicates. Okay, and this is Katchaal, this is Little Nicobar, Great Nicobar. These are the only three islands that we have these long-tailed macaque. And what we have done then, we thought that we should know now, what is the current population status of this animal, and we would like we wanted to compare our findings with the earlier findings, so then we will be able to say that if there is any kind of a pattern. So we followed the same field protocol which was followed by Umapati and et al. That was a trail survey, and we got all the information from them, and we used the same trails, and we walked on 212 kilometers in these islands, in all the Great Nicobar, Little Nicobar, and also Katchaal, and we detected about 79 groups of long-tailed macaque. And the population wise, if you look at it, that the plantation area had highest detection, the means the number of groups encountered, and also though the population got drastically affected during the tsunami, but still again we were able to get more number of groups in the coastal area than in the inland area. So this is what is the encounter rate between these three islands. Katchaal had more groups than the other two islands. And here, this slide shows what is the social organization of long-tailed macaque. They are basically multi-male, multi-female society. So that you could see that there are about in each group, this is a one group. If you take that group, there are about 6 males, and adult females are 13. That gives a kind of a, this overall pattern gives the kind of a sex ratio that is about 2.59 females per adult male. In Katchaal, it is about 2 again females per male. And the immature ratio was, if you look at it, that 1.89, almost to 3. This is per female. This is what is very interesting that I will, discuss later. And also, what we have done is to understand this population and social organization. Okay, yes, a tsunami happened. You know that you are all well aware of 2004 tsunami, and it was very bad, and it has affected our island system in a much in a bad way or negative way. And especially we looked at these 3 islands from the point of long-tailed macaque to see that what much of their habitat is affected, because largely the population was known even earlier. They are of a kind of a swamp related species, largely found in the coastal area where the fresh water joins to the ocean. That's where these pandanus grooves are more. These swamps, forest is more. That's where the population was recorded very high. So obviously, then when we have looked at it, if you look at this blue coloration in these islands, is the inundated area after the tsunami. That a large proportion of the habitat was affected in the basically in certain coastal area. That's what is actually the important habitat of a long-tailed macaque. And here it gives that what is area inundated in a square kilometer in these 3 islands. Now, if you look at it, what happened? What usually we expect? If the if there is any drastic effect on the population due to tsunami, if the population is washed away or killed, that kind of a thing, then there will be a differential kind of a mortality and a ordered life history. That's what one could see it. Okay, if that is the case, then what is this current observation, our observation, where it stands? Okay, so and what are all the actually the indicators of these things? One is change in the distribution pattern that we could see it, and also skewed age-sex ratios and rate of population change. Here, what you could see is this is what is our result. Here, if you see that one, the population has bounced back, means they have adjusted their life history traits, and there are many traits that we always talk about it, that is interbirth interval and sexual maturity, and many of these parameters. They usually, when there is a critical situation, we have seen in the many animal species that they adjust to increase their population size. That's what is the common pattern that we could see it. Here, it is what exactly that is the phenomenon that we could see in the Nicobar Island, that if you look at it, Great Nicobar, before it was 0.23, and later after tsunami, that population was badly affected. It had gone down to, almost 1, and it has bounced back to 0.3. That means even it has increased more than the before tsunami. This is what happens usually, because when it is bounced back, then the population goes very high. Then it will start fluctuating, and it is not a stabilized population. It requires quite a lot of time to get stabilized for the given habitat when there is this type of a phenomenon is observed. But what but population, since it is bounced back, that we no need to that way worry about the population, that somehow they are doing very bad. And also, if you look at it, another beautiful pattern that mean group size in 2000 and 2006 and 2014, there is a gradual increase in the mean group size. But because of the lack of space for the male to dispersal, when it is, the major habitat is lost, so they, usually males, though they are multi-male group, males have a tendency to leave the group and go and join the other group. This is what is a common pattern. That's how that, always we see that earlier social organization, why for one male, though the birth rate will be almost for at sex level, it will be same, but what happens is that males disperse, so number of males remain in the group will be usually small. That's why number of females is 3 or 2 per male. But here, if you look at it, here, adult females to adult male, which was earlier, is very high. It has come down. That means here, number of males increased in the group. What means that dispersal rate has gone down. That's what is the meaning of that one. And also, the reproductive rate has probably gone high. If you look at the number of immatures earlier was much, much lesser. And even in 2006, it was very less, but it has really gone high. That means that the reproductive rate of the long-tail macaque has really gone up. So that because of all these phenomena, that what we saw it, that population has bounced back. And but within a short period study, what we have observed, we have selected a few groups in these islands and monitored their demography pattern, means all the HXO individual, that within a short period that we didn't see any much variation. If you look at this statistics, that there is no variation between these years in any of these ratios. And also, the mean birth rate really has remained almost the same in all the groups. This is almost 0.49 is the mean birth rate, and this is what, and this is between the groups. That means 0.49 is the basically mean birth rate. But what one important thing that about seasonality, if we come to address the whether there is because if we take a bonnet macaque, only in a short period they produce the offspring, but on the other hand, lion-tailed macaque, that throughout the year they reproduce. Here also we can see that this particular graph shows that births are there throughout the year. Okay, and this is what is the pattern. But however, more births are found in the wet season. Here, the correlation is very high. In this case, that when there is a heavy rainfall, the more births are observed. And then if we look at the ecology of these animals, this we have also selected a group of macaque and followed them for a long period and collected the data on in the through scans, about 4,628 scans. When how that the scans are distributed, if we look at it, they spend quite a lot of time on rest, and also they spend time on move, and this is how the total scans are distributed. And feeding is the third highest activity that is observed. But the social activity compared to many other primates, they show that relatively high. And now, the one of the group that we have selected, that is what is in the focus here, and we have gridded the entire area that whether the group use the entire area, whatever that their range is evenly, or very there is any specific places that is used to very high. Here it indicates that some of the grids are very highly used, and some of the areas are, especially if you look at the peripheral areas, the border area are relatively less used, and in the core area, that intensity of usage is very high, but such grids are very less. But the overall home range also relatively much smaller, since they are very packed. And the scans data on even feeding ecology shows that they are not only just depending on the food from the wild, they also feed. They are highly adaptable. Macaques are highly adaptable species that they even ride all backyards and orchards and everything. So if you look at it, that coconut groves are very common in these islands. That one of the major food of the long-tailed macaque, if they are very close to the coconut grove or in the village area or in the surrounding area, that coconut is one of the major food, and the guava and banana and many of these food is actually more than their other food from the wild. And one of the major food from the wild is basically the bananas, and this is the kevda. That is actually the swamp plant found very close to the coastal area, and then the basically in the freshwater swamps. And that fruit is one of the major food among all the food from the probably forests or the secondary growth area. And macaques are very innovative. They are very good explorer. And we have also observed many of the very unique way of them handling the food. And one of that one is if this is a coconut is not easy to open up and consume it. Because it has a big much husk and the shell is there. Then that has to be opened. Then only that one can eat the coconut within in that coconut water. But they are very good. You can see the kind of a process that they are doing it, and they are very they climb the tree and they pluck the fruit and it is dropped. And if it is a tender, even they don't pluck it and they just open there itself and then they drink a water from that one. And even many times they pluck even tender coconut and they drink and they throw and then they go for another one. If it is a ripened one, it is handling for them is a bit difficult. So then they pluck it and they drop it, then they come to the ground and they start dehusking and then they pound it. That means they are very clever that they have to break. How to break it? Is one of the very it indicates their cognitive ability, their intelligence of in the extracting foraging system. And also here other photographs here, it shows that they are also capable of coming out with different type of tools to exploit or extract the food resources from the different origin of the food. So this table shows that the extracting foraging skills and the different type of, in a different type of food resources. And here that what I am showing is basically you look at the husk and dehusking of this coconut. It is depending on it. It uses a kind of a habitat platform that is this one is otherwise place or place or on a algae. It's not possible to break fully ripened coconut, but they are very good. They take they have a very good understanding of that what type of a surface that they have to use, and then they break it. So that indicates that their capability. And it is not just only that innovative, they're very clean animal. They know how to floss their teeth. Look at them. Here, they are using the feather of a bird to clean their teeth. It is one of the very unique observation that we have made with these macaque, that teeth flossing by the long-tailed macaque. Look at. And also, this is the next level of using of a tool. Here there are some of the fruits. Sometimes even we have seen with the other caterpillars also. They will be having a kind of a stings or the hairs on its surface that they have to remove that hair. Then only they can handle the food. And how to remove those hairs or stings or those things that they use the tool and they take the litter or other surfaces and they wrap it and they clean it and then they bite and then they use. And also they don't use other part of the body. Basically they use that their hand, that is the keratinite space, because the chances of we that hair touching to other surface, then there is a possibility of irritation and other problems. But since this is a relatively hard surface, so they use only their palm and they handle such type of a fruits or the caterpillars and they remove the stings or the hairs and then they consume it. These three indicates that they are good tool user and they are highly intelligent. I didn't tell that another point when I was talking about the first slide. There, the crab eating macaque. Though we have spent quite a lot of time with these macaques in the Nicobar Islands, but we didn't see them feeding on crabs in any of these islands. But so some of the subspecies of them in the many other islands of Southeast Asia have been observed to use the crabs. In one of the islands, people have recorded the crab eating by these long-tailed macaques, and also in some of the places they are very good and they have observed their major food is basically oysters, and they open the shell and they feed on oysters. That means that depending on the availability of the different resources, and they have adopted, they have explored their nature and they consume the food. Yeah, and so that the diversity of tool use and extractive foraging skills may be very good with these macaques. Probably it has to be explored in many other islands. Now, we will come to the monkey politics. Politics is not only, in our system. It's quite, obvious with many of these, monkeys. And there are, various ways of the, politics it can be seen. That's within a group and also between the group. So all such sorts of things that can be observed. Here I, talk about both aspects. One is takeover. Takeover is basically males. There are dispersal males. They come from outside, from the neighboring group or from other group, and they look for the opportunity to get into the, the group where it can reproduce and take over the entire group. That's ultimately reproduction is one of the major goal for the, these dispersal males, and so then they can have a reproductive fitness. So to achieve this one, the dispersal is a very regular phenomenon that we observe in many of the species. So that one of the phenomenon is the takeover. So here I talk about this, the takeover. Here we have observed one instance where from the one male from the outside it came, and then it attacked the resident male. He is the one RY, and he was badly wounded, and there was a mega fight happened for the entire day and for a couple of days. Then after that, the resident male was badly hurt and he was basically ousted by the outsider male, that is FY. And this is the phenomenon. This is the observation happened somewhere between 2013 and 2014. And here is actually the takeover happened. And after the takeover, there are several episodes that we could see because he's a newcomer. And there will be several things can happen in the group because the group members have to accept him, and also what will happen to the ultimately to the ousted male. And here you can see that one of the young fellow got badly hurt during this entire process, and ultimately it disappears much later after the takeover. Here that all the episodes are put together, and ultimately, after the of the entire group, this resident male remained as a peripheral male for some period, but sometime later, after several months, it died. And that means the impact of such a takeover is very serious, and such phenomenon can lead to very lethal, even by eliminating the males. It is not only from the population, even it reaches to such a level that it can, lethal or dead, basically. And also, same time, if the females are also having the young ones, probably when the male feels that he has to reproduce, but he will, what happens is, it is not by intentionally he goes and kills the infant, but there is a possibility that he will go behind the females, and in the process that young ones probably left, or if it's dropped, or something will happen to the young infants. So in that process, what happens is that young ones will get missed, or it will get killed. So that's how the infanticide happens, very awkward. So that's what we could see, that there is a disappearance of the few individuals that you could see it here, and only FY remains as the alpha male. This is after a post rank changeover, and this RY, this is the male, and he died in the month of March 14. This is the rank changeover happened in October 13. That means in after 6 months, that fellow really got totally eliminated. But then, what are all the other things happened in the group? Yeah, and if you look at that entire process, if you see here, this is the pre-rank changeover, this is the A, and this is the post-rank changeover, and this is the control. This is basically on the same group. It is completely after a 1 year period. What was the again pattern? If you really look at it, that this is home range, the number of grids that they use immediately after the takeover by the male, that it was shrunk. And also the roosting site, this is the roosting sites that they were using. So they didn't many of the roosting sites, if you really look at it, this into marks, and also very confined to the core, and all the roosting sites were also in the small area. But even after 1 year also, the impact was there. If you could see it, that roosting sites were confined to very, again, the core area, and many grids, the roosting sites which are away from the core area were also not used. That means such a takeover will have a much bigger impact on the social growth. But however, you can see that there is an expansion of habitat used by the macaque. That's what we could see it here. So if there is some kind of a change in the takeover or some kind of a thing, there is quite a lot of change happens in their ecology, habitat use, and all those phenomena that we can see it. And also, if you look at it, this is the same what I have conveyed, that number of grid use, post takeover and the pre takeover, it was significantly, it is very high, and also it has changed their aggressive behavior and between group encounters, especially in the post takeover. That means when the movement is confined to the smaller area, automatically the rate of between group encounter, means the encountering with the other group also has come down compared to the pre changeover. And the reproductive behavior, let us see, if you look at it, that this is the pre and also this is the post, that the reproductive behavior, overall mating rate gone up, and that out of that, adult male initiated more. That is very significantly very high. If you look at it earlier, it was an almost adult female and adult male initiation was almost the same. It was not such a big difference. But you could see that when the male takes over, the new male play a major role in the mating. And also the overall mating, if you the total number of mating earlier was very less, it is almost doubled. That's what it indicates. This is comparing between the different males in the group. And here, the mean number of matings per hour with a certain female, especially of a certain female, also goes high. That depends on, depending on the basically the female their status. It's a cycling status and on what stage they are there. Depending on that one, especially in certain females, that it has gone very high. And ultimately, if we look at this entire phenomenon of takeover, it is a one type of kind of a politics. What happens when the thing ultimately goal is for the reproduction, so that one can see that quite a lot of change. Then all the activities around the new male will be concentrated, and more mating happens. And if it is a lethal, then even that male gets eliminated. Now let us come to the between group. How if there is a social group, there are many groups around in that area, and what type of interactions will be there between these groups if we look at it. And this is the table which projects about the between group relationship. We have observed in this entire study period about 72 between group encounter. Out of that, 39 are non-aggressive. Non-aggressive means they recognize the group, some other group much earlier, then they avoid and they disappear. Probably very often they moving to the core area. This is what we have observed. Why this is happening? Even if you look at this gas model, we have used it, and this provides that what is expected, what is observed. Actually, the observed rate of a between group encounter is much lesser than the expected one. This is because the group size was small than the other groups. So then this is like almost a submissive group when compared to the other group. And also already it had a kind of a situation of a male takeover that has further affected the group. So they confined to the much smaller area, so that when we calculate the between group encounter, we consider what could be the overall density of all the groups in the area. Considering that kind of a theory, then we expected that okay, this could be the number, but it is much lesser. That's what that one thing. And another thing, basically, intra-group mating in TR was also during the between group encounter was very high. That means the males from the other groups, neighboring individual, used to have a kind of a mating with these individuals. That's what the one phenomenon that we have observed. And and where the between group encounter, if you could see it here, spatial distribution of again this this is confined to the much core area of the entire group. And there was one another group that this is the gray color indicates another group. There is a heavy overlap with the other group. So because the major encounter was actually observed between these two, and the encounters was basically in the core area of our study group, since it was a small group, that it is happening basically outside. So you can see this is how the between groups encounters are distributed. The maximum is is confined to the core area. Again, that means there was always a kind of an immersion or other groups using this one, especially one of the largest group. Now we'll come to the another behavior pattern of these animals, that is a reproductive behavior, one of the important phenomena. And the here I'm not going to give much all the details of the mating pattern and everything. One of the things that, as I have already informed you, that the birds are there throughout the year. That means even we can expect that even the matings also should happen in the throughout the year. So there is no restricted period. That means that few individuals will come to the estrus in any time of the period. So all the time there will be few individuals will be in estrus. So that's how that births can be seen or mating can be seen throughout the period. So one of the beautiful thing that mating success per mating approach is the one thing that there is 0.71 and this is what is the observation. Here we are talking about a pre-conception mating. I consider that okay, once they conceive, then they require about 160 days as a gestation period. Then the birth will happen. If we consider there will be three period before 6 months to the conception and also later birth. What patterns that we could see it in these three phases? That's what I'm going to talk about it here. Here one is, you see that there is about a zero point 0.7 per, the mating success per mating approach. Here, post-conception mating, also there is a mating. This is one of the beautiful phenomenon that we could see in these macaques. But here usually birth happens in the that is 6 month after the conception, and immediately after the conception also for next 3-4 months the mating it happens. Basically females gets the swelling, there will be a false swelling will be there. Always that false swelling confuses the male, and so then they keep mating the female. It is why this one only the mating that we didn't see just before birth, 2 months period. That is a very beautiful phenomenon. That means for even after she conceived, there was a 4 months she was mated. That is because one of the major phenomenon of confusing the males, because they are mated by multiple males. The males are confused, and when she is conceived and when he has to mount, and so there are many males will mount it. So it is a confusing strategy of the female. So though she has conceived, that males are not she didn't reveal the clue, so then they were clueless, and then at one day suddenly when she gave a birth, means only up to certain time that she could manage that the confusing of the her conceiving conceiving for the particular male or other individual. And even postpartum partum means after giving a birth. Okay, this is where she gave a birth, and if you look at it again, immediately after the birth, again mating starts in these macaques, and it reaches after 6 months to the 0.71 again. It reaches. If you look at it much earlier, and here it started with a 0.71 mating success, and it goes back to the 0.71. That means that is the usual rate of a mating. So this is what is the pattern exists that I will show here. See here, the regular mating pattern. Here she has conceived, and mating goes down, and this is where the birth again immediately the mating starts, and it reaches the same level, means almost a 0.71 level. So this is a mating initiation, mating and the matings per initiation, matings, and also ejaculation per mating. You can see that almost the same pattern in all those phenomena. And last part, just I would like to give from the point of a conservation. It is again very important, because now there is quite a lot of people, and many groups are after this tsunami, they have moved to the residential areas and villages, and also agricultural field. Then obviously that if there is more interaction with the human-dominated landscape, the chances of they getting infected with the other pathogens are also more. Here we have taken the example of endoparasite. If you look at it, that Great Nicobar, these groups that is very close to the the Campbell Bay, that is the town around that area, and where Little Nicobar is the one that is having a very less human landscape, and Katchaal again the groups that we have selected for the study was again bit isolated and with a little exposure to the human. What you could see here in this one is basically in some of these groups in the Great Nicobar had a high infection of many number of endoparasite taxa than in the Little Nicobar and also Katchaal. And among the and this is the same basically the rate of infection, and among them the rate of infection by nematode is very high in the in Great Nicobar, and in protozoans basically in both places that we could see it, that Great Nicobar and also in the Little Nicobar, that protozoans infection was very high. But more worrying part is this particular part, that is a nematode infection in the Great Nicobar. Is that's where we have to worry about this particular population. With giving brief of all many of these things, just I would like to conclude, and there are quite a lot of other stuff that I can share, but because that time constraint, I would not go to the behavioral ecology and their ranking system and many of the other aspects. And but I think I have briefed about different aspects of long-tail macaque in these islands. And I would like to say thanks to Professor Meva Singh, University of Mysore. He was part of the team, and Avadhoot and Arijit and Partho, playing a major role in collecting of these data and surveying all these things, and Shantala and working on the endoparasites, and these, my kids, they spend quite a lot of time in these islands and helping in collecting the samples, and that's. We can go for the questions now.
All right, so thank you so much for the very detailed presentation on the species in focus, and elaborating on not just your work but also the work that has been done so far on the species. So we ideally are supposed to now move on to the zoo talk on the biological park Chidiya Tapu, but unfortunately due to unforeseen circumstances, Mr. Tilak, who is the deputy director of the biological park, is unable to connect for the talk. So we will try and get the presentation and upload it separately for a later date for the audience who's tuned in on YouTube. So we will now move on to question and answers for the species talk that we had. So, sir, coming to the question, the first question for you is that in terms of the post-tsunami situation, was there any conflict pattern within the species? Has that changed vis-a-vis resource utilization as such?
Yes, even we have come out with one paper on addressing this particular issue. After they moved to human-dominated landscape, of course, now since they started consuming coconut and also banana and all possible things from their orchards are consumed by these animals. And even some of the people that they have a small coconut groups have almost lost major crop for these macaques, and they are struggling actually. And very often we have got a complaint, and probably if someone is more interested, that we have one publication on primate conservation, which directly talks about this particular aspect about the conflict and conservation related issues. One can refer it. And yes, it is true that it has increased a little bit because after tsunami, because of natural habitat of the swamp forest loss, they are pushed to human-dominated landscape. Obviously, then it has increased a little bit of increase in the conflict.
All right, sir. And so the next question for you is that how has the rate of population change been estimated in terms of the protocol, like pre and post tsunami? Have there been any changes in the kind of monitoring exercises that had to be done as such, if there were any? If you can elaborate on it.
That's what actually one of my major talk actually the first few slides that how population change. That's what I have addressed. I compared one of the slide that 2000 survey by Dr. Umapathi, and also after tsunami there was a survey by Dr. Shiv Kumar. That's where he has pointed out that encounter rate has almost 50% drop. But now after almost a 10 years gap, then our survey conducted, it shows that population has bounced back. That's what I have projected it. If it is this population monitoring is done, at least once in a 5 year, then we will be able to understand the overall pattern in these islands. But unfortunately, it is not happening. It's only 3 assessments so far available.
All right, so fine. And so the next question for you is, what is like the group composition dynamic exactly? And are like, do the males disperse as such, or do they stay with the group? How is it? If you can tell us more on
Yeah, that's what again, the one of the slide I have pointed out that see earlier male dispersal rate probably was very high. Probably I'm using it because I'm not sure what was it. But if you look at it, that number of males in the group in the current population is very high. So that number of females has gone down. Earlier, it was 4 or 5 females per male in the group. But now, why it has come to then 2 or 3? That means obviously the number of males in the group has gone high. Why? Because the rate of dispersal rate probably has come down. That is lack of probably space. So since they are packed probably, because of many of these phenomena probably resulted in probably decrease in the rate of dispersal.
All right, sir. And sir, the next question is that I do not. How large are the territories that the group maintains if there's a home range as such that territory in the species, and how do they defend it?
It's very difficult because many of these groups have a
Okay, I
very
will
high
shut up.
overlap in the range. Very high in overlap in the range. And also, since the study was done only on two groups, basically intensive data collected, one group, of course, had a much larger range that is proportional to their group size. And our another group, one of the major our study group, what I have shown, had a very smaller home range because that is this group size is again smaller. So then it may be proportional, but that requires a kind of a study, following at least several groups with the varying group size. Then only we will be able to answer that one. But the two groups indicates that, of course, one of the group had about 30 to 40 individuals had double home range than the another group that is focus of our study, which had almost very small and highly confined to the very narrow space.
All right, sir. And sir, if you could elaborate, the next question is that if you could elaborate more on the effect that seasonality had on the increase in the intrinsic rate of the population. I think you mentioned it in one slide. If there is any correlation between seasonality and the rate at which the births increasing.
Seasonality, basically, they are not seasonal. That's what is I pointed out. Okay, birds are there throughout the year. Okay, but there is a slight peak that we could see that is especially July, that's that, and there will be good number of birds. That's what we have observed. But maybe probably that's the time. By the time they wean their young ones, then it will be a dry season. So then the chances of they getting different other food resources may be very high. That may be the probably reason, but that is not properly explored. But of course, this is what is the pattern. There is no seasonality. There's only small peak. That's what we have observed.
All right, sir. And sir, how does does developmental activity kind of impact the kind of forest that they prefer, or is it what is the effect like on of developmental activities as such on the species?
Yeah, looking at the current situation, what the projects that the government of India is planning, this question is very important. But See, one way macaques are very adaptive species. They are capable. Okay, because if you look at even what I have shown that after the tsunami, they have started even eating the eggs or coconut or even human orchard, whatever that food resources available, they have adapted to eat those things and survive. But even if there is quite a lot of developmental activities, there is a possibility of they get pushed to the again some other area. Since they are totally confined to the only three islands, then the available to overall habitat itself is very small, and it can have a big negative impact. See, once the conflict rate goes very high, people have a tendency that they don't tolerate. If they don't tolerate, and also there are many situations now, there are defense areas, and there are airfields and many of these things that they cannot tolerate any of these kind of things, that there is a possibility of the eliminating or chasing away, then it will have a probably big impact on their overall population size, availability of the habitat, probably even increase the conflict. They might eliminate these animals also, that we cannot say not possible.
All right, sir. And so the last question for you is that for such an intelligent species, what would you suggest as key captive management strategies for zoos?
Uh, these animals, macaques, basically in the captivity, if you want to have good enrichment, and see, one of the major mistake that we do it in the zoos, basically we provide the food directly to them. And if we do it in an alternative way, that if the food is given in a dispersed way, and also in a put it in a much more secretive way, that they have to explore and extract the food, that's where they will be more active all the time, and they will be looking for it, and they will be more dynamic, so then they will be healthy also. That is what we have seen. Even we have suggested to, even for the lion-tailed macaque and also many other things, that we are collaboratively working with the Mysore Zoo and also Chennai and many other places, and there is quite a lot of this kind of enrichment is happening. And also, since their 30 to 35% of their food is other than plant resources. It may be insects, or it may be eggs, or it may be other different type of sometimes fungus and mushrooms, and they feed on quite a lot of stuff. And if we provide many of these stuff also, so it will give a kind of a supplement of enrichment, so that in some of the places they are giving different insects as a food resources. They leave it, so that they go and actively catch these live animals, and they eat that one. So that becomes then it becomes almost the most natural, and that is the kind of a situation that has to be created, so then they become more dynamic, and also they get all supplements.
All right, sir. So those were the questions for you. And with this, we come to the end of our 39th Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo Talk. So on behalf of CZA, I would like to thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule and joining us for this talk. I would also like to thank the audience who were part of this talk. Unfortunately, we couldn't show the zoo talk, but hopefully in the future, we'll be able to upload it as a separate thing, and you can view the biological park Chidiya Tapu as well. And I would also like to inform the audience that we will be back next week on Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. on our for our week 30 talk, which will be on the saltwater crocodile and as the species in focus, and the Madras crocodile bank as the zoo in focus. So do tune in for that talk also. And thank you again very much, Dr. Kumar. Namaskar.
Thank you, Arundhati. Thanks for giving this opportunity. I'm really glad that this opportunity it came to me, and I could share some of our findings with you people. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.